Who's winning the PR battle here? And has the Justice Department done enough to explain their actions? Let's meet tonight's party panel. Oh, it's a good one for a Thursday night. We've got attorney and Republican strategist Alexandra Wilkes. We've got Democrat strategist and former Biden campaign surrogate. He is my bridge to the future. It's Kevin Walling. And comedian and host of the Part of the Problem podcast. I believe he might have a thing or two to say about this. Dave Smith, yes? So, Alexandra, I will start with you. There are a lot of legal questions here. Merrick Garland oftentimes seems surprised that he is, in fact, the Attorney General, and he acts as though he has to get permission from someone to say anything when really it's up to him. Why so much stonewalling and silence? It was a very short briefing, and he took no questions.
Look, I think that this public display has shown complete weakness on the part of the DOJ in this matter, and it has really led to a lot of confusion out there. It leads me to believe that really this is an example of Washington bubble thinking, where they don't understand just how much significance something like this would hold to a lot of Americans out there and how jarring this would be. Because there was just no plan to keep this tight and controlled and measured. As a law enforcement agency, you want to take the temperature down on something, not ratchet it up. And when there's no information being provided, when everyone is just watching the same live footage of a dark Mar-a-Lago being, surrounded by guys with machine guns, people are going to have questions. And of course, on the legal matters, we're not going to know anything until we see the warrant and the underlying affidavit. Mm-hmm. But until then, they should have made more of an effort to carefully release this information, leading me to believe that Merrick Garland may not have known exactly what was going on.
How could that be? He's the Attorney General. This is a former president. This isn't Roger Stone, Kevin. This is the former president of the United States. And if it were a former Democrat president, there's absolutely no way there would have been this show of force and this much personnel to get some boxes of records.
Well, Kennedy, listen, the Attorney General said pretty publicly today in response to what we saw on Monday from Mar-a-Lago, reinforcing the independence of the judiciary, laying out the fact that he was the sign-off as the Attorney General for this search of Mar-a-Lago. It was not, the Gestapo moving in. It was a number of agents moving in at 10 a.m. in plain clothes, searching the compound and being directed to where this information was. And, you have said this week, and I have said that let's release the warrant. Let's get that information out there. That's what he said today that he intended to do.
And
absolutely.
The list of
I want to see all the underlying documentation, but it starts with the warrant, certainly, which hopefully we'll see tomorrow.
Yes, by 3 p.m. The AG has said that.
That's the hope.
So, Dave, we're getting wrapped up in particulars and losing sight of what's really problematic here.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, for Merrick Garland to say that, look, the FBI, we just faithfully execute the laws. That's it. There's no politicization going on here. It's just this. I mean, this is absurd. Look, think about the crimes that former presidents have committed. Barack Obama himself, when asked about whether he would prosecute the George W. Bush administration, he said, look, we tortured some folks, but we have to move forward. We can't look backward. There was no one in the FBI who said, well, hey, look, we faithfully, blindly enforced the law, so we're going to go start rounding up all the Bush administration officials. And Barack Obama himself, as Donald Trump said, he said it kind of sloppily, said created ISIS, but Obama certainly did knowingly fund and arm ISIS in Syria. I mean, that's literal treason. But the FBI didn't say, hey, we just have to enforce the laws. So are you telling me that there's some crime here that Donald Trump committed that is so much more egregious than the crimes of previous presidents? Or is it possible that this same FBI, who, as Andrew McCabe said in his 60 Minutes interview, the Department of Justice was determined to bring down Donald Trump. They thought about invoking the 25th Amendment, and then they settled on sicking a special prosecutor on him. I mean, I think most Americans know what's going on here, except the very, very brainwashed progressives who think Donald Trump was some unique evil on this country. The idea that the FBI is not politicized, they have been politicized from day one. They were used in World War I to spy on anti-war activists who Woodrow Wilson later arrested and charged with crimes. They were used to spy on civil rights leaders. This is nothing new. Aside from what, modern Republican voters like to think, like they just became politicized during the Trump administration, this is the entire history of the FBI. They should never be given the benefit of the doubt. They should be abolished. They're an embarrassment.
No, you know what they're given? They're not given the benefit
society.
of the doubt. They're given more power and a clandestine way to operate, right, so they can abuse that power with very, very little accountability. As the surveillance state has been somewhat checked, the power of the FBI has only grown, and they have had so many missteps. And this doesn't do anything to heal the reputational damage that they have taken on with those missteps. And I hope at some point and the only thing that's going to do it is, a complete audit and a comeuppance. And as someone said last night on the show, getting rid of, it was Tom McClintock, getting rid of all senior leadership. And, we should do that across the board with many areas of federal law enforcement. But we have to start with the FBI. All right, the question on everyone's mind: is there a rat in Trump's inner circle? Newsweek reporting Mar-a-Lago. The raid was based on classified information from an inside source. A federal law enforcement source tells Fox that probable cause for the warrant likely came from a Secret Service agent. I said it today on Outnumbered. But former White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney says a tipster could be closer to Trump than we think. Barron.
This would be someone who was handling things on day-to-day, who knew where documents were, so that would be somebody very close inside the president. My guess is there's probably 6 or 8 people who had that kind of information. I don't know the people on the inside circle these days, so I can't give any names of folks who come to mind, but your instinct, I think, is a good one, is that if you know where the safe is and you know the documents are in 10 boxes in the basement, you are pretty close to the president.
Is there a leaker on the loose? Who could it be? So that's what I said, because the Secret Service let the FBI in. The FBI didn't have to have a battalion of armed agents when the Secret Service is keeping that residence safe. Obviously, the Secret Service, they are sworn officers. They swear to uphold the Constitution. They're not going to let Donald Trump run around with plans to overtake the United States with the help of Russia. So who could it possibly be, Alexandra?
I mean, it's this type of speculation that I think is creating the confusion out there that's so angering to so many Americans, particularly after the litany of scandals that we have seen not really play out or fizzle out, thinking about like the Russia investigation, for example. I think that there's a real feeling on the part of a lot of Americans that the former president is just kind of constantly under attack, that he is constantly under siege from people, whether it was people who, worked in the bureaucratic, parts of the government trying to subvert his agenda, or even the Justice Department that was looking into his campaign. There's, I think, a legitimate feeling on the part of many of Americans out there that he has been under attack. And I think that then when you look at measures like the Inflation Reduction Act, which just hired 87,000 new IRS agents, many Americans are feeling completely unnerved, thinking about, well, if the federal government can go after a former president in this way, and with such confusion and just such disarray, what does this mean for me, who doesn't have access to the best lawyers in the world, who doesn't, have access to the best compliance? That's what I've been saying
all
it's
along.
Really
I'm going to talk to Darrell Issa in just a little bit about that, about the weaponization, not only of the Department of Justice and the FBI, but the IRS. And we know that they have bullets. We know that they have guns. We know what they're coming after. They're coming after the beginnings of your wealth. They want to take that away from you. That is a government taking. Taxation is theft. So, Dave, who do you think it could have been?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Look, there's basically two groups, right? There's Trump loyalists and there's the Secret Service. So I tend to agree with you. It seems more likely to be the Secret Service, but it's not impossible that it could have been a Trump loyalist. But I would say that, look, I think it's a little bit backward to say, well, look, if they could do this to Trump, then they could do this to anybody. I think really the truth is that if they can do it to anybody, then eventually they can even do it to the former president of the United States. And the truth is that the IRS and the FBI and all types of, police departments throughout this country, they do this to regular people all of the time. We have tens of thousands of SWAT raids every year in this country. It's for those people who have been through that, they have lived through totalitarianism, and no one really cares except for, libertarians.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe a few good leftists, but no one really cares until it's a high-profile one.
Yeah, absolutely right. They will occasionally publish stories about people who have been victims of civil asset forfeiture. And I said that last night. That's essentially what this is looking like. But also, if you're sort of reading between the lines here, Kevin, I wouldn't want to go back to the White House if I were Melania. I may call somebody and be like, it's in my closet. Go look in there.
She didn't want to go to the White House the first time. I watched you on Outnumbered this morning, Kennedy, and I think you said that you thought it was Barron. I actually think it's Tiffany Trump. We haven't heard from Tiffany in a long time. She's a lawyer now. She knows what those kind of documents look like. My money's on Tiffany down in Mar-a-Lago tipping somebody off.
The plot thickens. I'm still going with Barron and Melania. And maybe working in concert together for very, very different reasons.